Welcome to Right Way Politics with Brian Kerwin, a noted political expert in Virginia. We do politics the right way, the winning way, and we leave the left way behind when we do things the way we should. And I'm speaking with the noted political expert in Virginia, former delegate, current Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Jason Miyares. Attorney General Miyares, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Well, first of all, we've known each other long enough that you're not allowed to call me that. You call me Jason. We've known each other for too long, but it is great to be with you. It's great to be with a living political legend in Hampton Roads, Brian Kerwin.
In my mind, at least.
Right. I saw a bumper sticker the other day that said, "The older I get, the better I was." So maybe that applies to both of us. I don't know, Brian, but it's good to be with you, my friend.
We've had we've had our moments, and we've actually we've worked for the same campaigns at times. So it was kind of
we have both worked with and for and against each other.
Yeah, I don't remember what our record was when we opposed each other. I can't quite find those numbers.
Amen. But it's great to be with you, my friend.
Thank you. So let me just start with, at what time, my story of going back in political campaigns goes back to literally when I was 9. And
wow.
My grandparents on one side were Democratic Union activists. My grandparents on my other side were basically the heads of the local Republican unit. So
Thanksgiving dinner was quite spirited for you.
Nobody talked about politics when I was growing up. You couldn't bring it up.
Probably wise.
But yes. I volunteered at like voting campaign headquarters since as long as I can remember. But what was your first taste of politics as far as campaigns?
Well, I think there's kind of your point. It's almost separated. There's the interest in politics. I remember as a child, my mother was a huge Ronald Reagan fan. As you know, a lot of Cuban Americans are virulent anti-communists. And that was really my gateway. I was kind of odd. I would get permission to stay up to watch some of Reagan's speeches, or whether it's the State of the Union. And those are some of my early memories of Reagan. And then, so I was always interested in politics and government. I met both my uncle and my cousin, both suffered under the Castro regime. But I would say, was not in high school. I never volunteered or spent a single day or time on any campaign in high school. It was when I was in college. I went to James Madison University. I was a business major. I got involved in college Republicans. And so both some local, I remember working the polls for a delegate, Glenn Weatherholtz. He was the state delegate up there. Might have been a freshman or sophomore. He was running it. He was a local sheriff. And then I remember vividly in 97, Jim Gilmore was running for governor. He was then the attorney general, and I was the vice chair of the state college Republicans. I was very involved with his campaign on a volunteer basis and worked hard. And just that night, got to travel to Richmond and be there for that victory night. And that really got me interested. Got me interested in the campaign and the political apparatus. And so
you really got started. So you got started during a year of a 3-office Republican statewide sweep, and look where you are now.
I haven't thought about that, but yeah, in some ways, yeah, that was that pivotal moment where I got really interested in not just the policy, but the political side of it as well. And that obviously was a very well-run campaign, and made some friends that year that are still close friendships with me to this day.
So where did it go from the 90s?
Well, it's amazing how life takes you in these different paths. I was a business major. I had a job lined up at a bank in Northern Virginia. It was going to pay me very, very good money, and I was obviously somebody who worked my way through college and was finally looking forward to making money. And then about a week before graduation, I got a phone call from Chris LaCivita, who's then the executive director of the state Republican Party. who said, "Hey, I have a position at the Republican Party of Virginia as a political assistant. Would you like to be interviewed for it?" And I interviewed for it. It offered me a grand total of $19,000 a year, which I thought was, hey, that's good money. It was peanuts then. It's obviously even more peanuts now.
Right.
And that's what I did. I worked at the Republican Party of Virginia for, I think, maybe 3 or 4 months. And then a local state senator hired me as his legislative aide and to handle his reelection. That would have, I think, been, 99. And so I worked as an aide and then also handled some political stuff for him. And then George Allen came calling. They needed somebody to travel with him. He already had a driver, but they needed somebody who had some political sense to travel alongside him. That's when I met George Allen. It's also when I met my wife. I met my wife on the campaign trail, George Allen, back in 2000 in Keysville, Virginia. Introduced me to my wife, Paige, who was then working as a finance staffer on the Allen for Senate race in 2000. That's the one he won and beat Chuck Robb. And so, she was, it took me a long time to convince her to both A, date me and then B, marry me. But eventually we got there.
Yeah. I've got a record on that side myself.
Okay. Yeah. Sometimes it takes some work, but, and then I decided, you know what? I figured the world was in desperate need of another lawyer. I candidly viewed working in the campaign side of things as a young man's game. And I'd always had an interest in the law, partly because of the family story, great respect for who we are as a people, where we have a constitution that respects individual rights, individual dignity. And so, after working as a legislative aide and doing some campaign political things, I went off to law school, William & Mary, and thought that chapter's done. I was ready to practice law. I'd always had interest in being a prosecutor. And so I first was in private practice for a short period of time at a firm and candidly got bored. Took a pay cut to become a prosecutor. Loved the job. Still one of the best jobs I've ever had. And was in the Virginia Beach Commonwealth Attorney's Office. Loved my time there. And then fate kind of intervened. I had a friend that was interested in running for Congress that I went to church with. And I had breakfast with him and said, I think you'd be great. I think you should run. If you need any help, let me know. And his name was Scott Ridgell. And he said, I'm having an informal weekly breakfast with Thelma Drake about what this would look like. Maybe you could join us maybe once a week or once every other week. And so we started getting together before I had to go to court just for coffee. And out of the blue, I'll never forget this. It was July 4th weekend of 2009. He called me up and said, Jason, I'm running for Congress. I said, that's great. I'm thrilled for you. He's like, well, I have a second caveat. I've been thinking about it, been praying about it. I don't want an outsider to run my campaign. I know you've worked the campaigns. I want you to run and get me elected. And I said, you're crazy. I just got assigned a capital murder case. I got, so many, there's no way I can leave that office. Scott, I'm flattered. I love my job. I love my life. And Scott said, all I'm asking you is to think and pray about it. And I remember going to my wife and saying, I know this is crazy. I was literally standing out by my pool. And I walked in, I said, you're not going to do the phone call I got. And my wife, Paige, just said, well, he's asking you to think and pray about it. You should. I did. There's a lot of soul searching. That was not easy. I had a very young family. We had just had our second daughter. So I had 2 kids in diapers. And I just thought, it's easy for me to tell a friend, hey, put it all out there, run for public office. And my friend's asking for my help. And I'm saying, hey, I'm too comfortable. After me telling him, hey, you got to be willing to not be comfortable. And so I remember telling my wife, hey, I think I'm going to do this. And she said, you can do it on one condition. I said, what? She says, you must win. I was like, wow, no pressure there.
Oh, that's right out of Rocky.
Right. So I did. I went on this journey with Scott. I remember how hard it was to inform Harvey Bryant that I was leaving what was then my dream job.
Right.
To go take this leap. I had no idea, 90+% of incumbents get reelected to Congress. So it was a big gamble. I did. I think candidly, it started me on a path that if I hadn't said yes to that step, I don't think I would be Attorney General today, just the way it kind of worked out. And so Scott won. As I mentioned, I had a young family. I had no desire to move to Washington, D.C. with a young family. And I didn't have much desire to just be in a district office handling constituent affairs. So I said, listen, what I'd like to do is kind of serve as both a policy and political advisor to you. And I set up my own consulting company and handled a lot of things in that realm. For Scott,
yeah, I hear that's a good business.
It is a good business, right? And I enjoyed it. I handled a few legal matters. I still obviously maintain my law license, but handled a few legal matters and did that for about 4 years, 5 years, where I was both one foot in the policy side, one foot in the political side. I go up to Washington usually about twice a month, but I was able to be home, be with my family, and it was different. It was fun. I did miss the law. I know some people are crazy because they know a lot of miserable lawyers. I love the law. I loved both the mental challenge and I enjoyed being in the courtroom. And so
that always struck me too. I can't tell you how many lawyers I know that want to be anything but lawyers.
I know. Well, I think the key is, my joke is, I refuse. Be very smart. I tell all my friends that go in the law, like, be smart of the type of law you practice, because almost every divorce lawyer I know is miserable because they're dealing with people at their most stressed. They're fighting over their kids or they're fighting over assets. I'm like, if you can, avoid divorce law because that's the most stressful. But I like the courtroom and I like the camaraderie and I enjoyed it. So I still dabbled in law some, mainly focused on, hey, Scott Ridgwell's my guy. And obviously in 2010, that's when you and I first crossed path, and this may shock you, Brian, but I was not a big fan of yours at the beginning.
I can't imagine,
because you were really good at your job, and you drove me crazy. But we were obviously in a Republican primary and against each other, but there was always a very healthy amount of begrudging respect because I knew how effective you were.
I was just a fan of Sun Tzu. If your opponent is angry, irritate him. And when you know you're not the top fundraising candidate in a race,
you have to think outside the box.
Yeah,
yes.
You got to make noise.
You did. I would say some of those radio ads that you ran against us, I still think I hear in my sleep.
I don't know if it was my copy or the voice talent's delivery, but
I think it was a combination of both. But those things were ad nauseum and they were quite effective. But we look back now and then. Well,
let me go even further. When you first dabbled in the 90s and you were like on delegate races and things like that, and you went with George Allen. Was there anything about the campaign side of things that wasn't what you thought it would be? Like, I thought this was...
The first thing I realized is it is a grind. It is not... I mean, Tom Clancy has a great quote where he says, politics is Hollywood for ugly people, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah.
And I always I'm in this position, I have a lot of people that come to me and say, hey, I'd like to run for office. How should I look at it? And I said, you got to realize the campaign will be one of the hardest things you ever do. Get a great team of advisors because you're going to lean on them a lot. And you have to have people around you that are willing to tell you when you're wrong. But it is a grind. Nothing moves in politics unless it's pushed. Anybody who thinks it's easy, I mean, listen, you can come in and I guess if you're a billionaire, maybe that changes. But even that, you are putting yourself out there. The late, great Leo Wardrop, as you know, used to represent the 83rd district in the House of Delegates.
Eminently quotable.
Eminently quotable. I remember him telling me running for public office is like walking down Main Street naked. Everybody's going to see every flaw and they're all going to be exposed. I just thought that was pretty accurate.
His quote to me was, the half-life of an ex-politician can be measured in minutes.
That is hilarious. Leo Wardrop was just a legendary figure.
He's a lot of the reason why I got into this business because his method of campaigning was infectious. If every campaign could be as fun as a Leo Wardrop campaign, and he was never unopposed. I said,
That's true.
if every campaign was this fun, what a great business.
Amen. He was so gregarious. He was so quotable. And so I think back to your question, I think that's what I saw was the grind. I mean, when I was in Georgetown, I meet with him at his house very early in the morning. He would leave behind little Brooke, and Brooke is now out of college, which is wild, but little Brooke, and a lot of times she was so sad to see Daddy go. And it was hard. You're out on the campaign trail. You're just constantly both meeting voters and obviously talking to the press. And so it is a very, very difficult thing to do. And I always say, if your family is not all in, you have to do it as a partnership. If your wife and your family is not all in, it's not worth it. Because I have seen some people in politics lose their family. And I always say there's never a job worth having anywhere that's worth losing your family over.
And you're so right. And I say, and I probably have more than your average number of first-time candidates on my slates. Yeah. And that's one of the things I always say to them, because everybody's all in at the beginning, or at least they say they are. But when you're spending 7 nights a week with everyone except the person who's supposed to be most important to you, sooner or later, it gets to be a problem. I mean,
yeah. Now, I will say this, Brian. I have always, and I've tried to adopt this in where possible in my life. I always tell my candidates, you need at least half of Sunday off. If you want to visit churches or whatever, but you need at least from early afternoon Sunday through sundown, where you are not focused on. There's no conference calls. Don't do any meetings. Now, sometimes after Labor Day, that sometimes goes out the window, but where possible, focus on your family and you time, where you are focusing on yourself, because tired candidates make mistakes.
That's true.
And if you don't have that break, you will make a mistake. And so I always try to advise as well people that back when I talked with Scott Ridgell, we used to make sure where possible, Sunday afternoons or Sunday evening, nobody was to bug them unless it was an absolute emergency that was dealing with something Monday morning. We needed to clear that, make sure people could recover, because you get burned out and it's a grind. Now, I will also say this. It's also exhilarating because you get to see and meet people you normally don't get to see and meet in life. You get to see, traveling with Governor Allen in 2000, that was kind of my experience in a statewide race. I saw every part of Virginia. And let me tell you, this is a bold, beautiful, diverse state. It is so different being in, at the Breaks Interstate Park, or being in Galax at the Fiddlers Convention, versus being on the Eastern Shore or being up in Arlington. It's so different, but it's amazing. And the people are just fantastic. And so that part is fantastic. If you're an extrovert, it's an extrovert's dream, because you're constantly both meeting and interacting with so many great people. And I love to say, tell me your story, because everybody has such an amazing, unique story to tell. So that's the part I would say too, that showed me it is a grind that's also pretty exhilarating at the same time.
So you're with Congressman Ridgell, you started your own firm. At what point did you say, okay, we'll take on clients besides Congressman Ridgell?
I would say one of my dear friends from James Madison University decided to start his own firm and approached me about joining forces. He was out of Atlanta, Gary Marks and Madison Strategies. And so we did that. I think I did that 2013 or early 2014, somewhere around then. We started kind of doing some outside work, very selective. He did it more than me. And it was a lot of fun. Worked some James Langford, the U.S. Senator from Oklahoma, did some work with him. And so we did some stuff, but a lot of it was Virginia focused. And but it was always very, very much focused on Scott Ridgell. The second district at the time, it's changed, but at the time, it was one of only, I think, 6 districts in the entire country that had voted for Obama twice, but had voted for a Republican for Congress. And so it has since changed where it's more of a Republican district. I would kill for the second district now versus a constant fight. But it was, that's the thing with Congress is you're running it never really stops because it's a 2-year cycle and you never stop. And then we did that, and then candidly,
well, that was about the
things
time that
changed.
you and I actually aligned, and
Yeah, we aligned, worked together on some races, and
we
really
had some.
got to know
We
each
got this
other.
Glenn Davis guy going.
That's right, Glenn Davis, 2013. That's right, Glenn, and he was both a dear friend, and he was on city council. I know you helped him on city council. We worked together. That was a very, very competitive race. Still is a competitive district. It's great to help work with Glenn, get him on council. We had that was a great win.
Yeah,
And,
I noticed we avoided having a primary in that one. That was kind of comfortable.
We did, and so that was a lot of fun working together. And then
I try not to have Jason Miyares and primary in the same sentence if I can help it.
But it was a lot of fun, and it was a great joy to work with you and work with Glenn, and then had no idea in 2015 that my life would change again. That a different type of calling, and
not a lot of people do this. Not many people cross the line from saying, I'm going to help get people elected and make a career out of it, and then decide, I think I'm going to put my name on that ballot. And
well, the interesting thing is, my mindset was I was never making a career was done. I would go back into law and probably go back to prosecuting, candidly.
Mm-hmm.
And then this door opened with this House Delegate District, and a lot of people that I have trusted over years, a lot of folks, leaders in the business community and others, said, we would like for you to run for this seat. But the great irony is Leah Wardrop had back in, this would have been, let me think, 2007. I never forget, I was his legislative district chair, and Leah Wardrop called me. I was living in a different part of the city, and I was practicing law. I was in private practice, and he said, I'm going to retire. I'd like you to run for my seat. And I said, I'm flattered. And I thought about it. I did not feel comfortable. My daughter was born in January. He called me in February. And I'd said, that's just not in the cards. I'm really flattered, Leo, but no, I closed that door. And then, so I'd said no. And I guess the good Lord sometimes, the old saying, man makes plans and then God laughs. And then in 2015, the door got reopened. A lot of people really asked me to look at it. I was kind of already thinking about practicing law more. I kind of felt like with Scott Ridgely, he was on autopilot at that point. And I was actually entertaining going back into practicing law. And this door opened. And I decided to take the plunge. I'm passionate about Virginia Beach and coastal Virginia. I love my hometown. And I thought this is a different way to serve. I'd been a legislative aide before law school, so I knew a little bit how the legislative process worked. I said yes. I ran and won. And candidly, at that point, that's when I got elected in House Delegates and went back to practicing law.
Right.
Full time again at Hanger and Associates, Hunter Hanger's firm, and he's just been fabulous because when you're in the House of Delegates serving for 60 days a year, that's not great for a lot of law firms. They actually lose money on you in some ways because
right.
You're not there getting clients and actually billing. But a great group of folks, totally understanding, and so I got out of it. So I've been in this kind of that was kind of a seesaw those couple of years, and then obviously Scott Ridgely retired in 2016, so he definitely didn't need my assistant anymore. But at that point, I was already with working with Hunter, and so yeah, I was in a different role, and it's been interesting being on both sides because I think it's given me a really healthy perspective on.
Now, as a consultant, I still have the memory enough to remember you dabbled a bit in presidential campaigns too. And what was that experience like to go at that level?
Well, that was that was much more Gary Marks. He was heavily involved with Bush 04 and then later in Mitt Romney's first run. And then I was Marco Rubio's state co-chair in 16. And that was, that's a different level. I mean, candidly, that is.
Didn't you have a hand in Scott Walker?
That was Gary. Madison
That was Gary.
Strategies did, but mainly through Gary. He was one of
Right.
Scott Walker's main guys before Walker decided that where Walker dropped out. So yeah, and Walker is a great guy, met and interacted. So that was my main, and he's much more of a national. Gary Marks is much more of a national guy, and you just see that is a different level of that's a different level of, if running for kind of a district office or a statewide office is the grind. Everything that I saw and experienced, I'll never forget 2016 with Marco. He came to Virginia Beach, did this rally, and he had a serious stomach virus. He was not feeling great, and I remember I was with him backstage, and he was half dehydrated. He just was not well, and I still don't know. He gave a fantastic speech. He went out on that stage. I think it was a little bit of a jolt of adrenaline. He gave just a fantastic speech to a packed crowd at the Virginia Beach Convention Center. And I still don't know how he did it. He got off that stage. He got in a car. He just collapsed. And it just reminds me of the Jordan playing with the flu game in the NBA Finals. I don't know if it was the flu or whatever, but he was struggling, and talk about playing injured. And so you got to do that as a candidate. You got to have those days. I don't know what you told your folks, but I remember I told Scott Roger, you have to think every campaign there's going to be 5 bad days where everything goes wrong. And at the end of the day, when you go to bed, you just think that's one of the 5, and you get up the next morning and do it again. The key is you want to make sure election day is not one of those 5, right?
Right.
But
I tell my candidates
to get through it.
I tell my candidates to read "If" by Rudyard Kipling, and the entire message of that is you're never as great or as horrible as you hear that you are. And
one of the greatest pieces of advice I've ever gotten, Brian, was when I got elected Attorney General. Great piece of advice was never, ever, ever let criticism go to your heart and compliments go to your head.
Pretty smart.
So that's very smart, and that's part of the reason why I've always surrounded myself, I think, with friends that have known me a long time that aren't afraid to tell me when they think I'm wrong.
So was it a hard decision when you're in a good House seat, you're good with your law firm, you're good, you're in a good spot, and at what point do you say, I want to run statewide, I want to go see Virginia like I did with George Allen?
You know what? It was agonizing. It was an agonizing decision. It's funny that the Republican Attorney General Association came and wanted to meet with me, and I kind of had an idea, obviously, what they were thinking of, and I purposely had them meet with me in a conference room overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. And I said, look at this. Why would I want to leave this? I have a great life. I love being a delegate. I love working with the lawyers I work with. I just don't have an interest in that. Thanks, guys. And then they asked me to still think about it. And I was thinking about it. I kept feeling about it. I remember going on a walk with my wife, Paige. And I remember saying, I really feel like the Lord may be calling me to run for Attorney General. I know that's crazy, but I don't think I can win. And I remember my wife saying, well, the Lord doesn't call us to victory, he calls us to obedience. And I remember thinking, I so wish you had said something different. Like, are you crazy? You can't do this. So I went through the process and reached that conclusion. It was very, very hard because I knew I was giving up I had been reelected, I think every year was 60% plus. And I thought really had done a lot of work getting around my district where, and I was starting to get some leadership and get more authority. And I realized I was giving it up because you can't run for 2 offices at the same time. But I was really gravely concerned about where Virginia was. And, that prompted me to do what I did. And it was not an easy decision. But it was ultimately the right decision, but it was not an easy decision. I'll tell you that.
One of my favorite quotes is, we walk by faith, not by sight.
Amen. And it was hard. I was gone 6+ days a week. And it was hard. And so it was, but it was the right decision to make. Obviously, thrilled that we were able to get through that gate, and honored to serve in this capacity. It's been a thrill.
My closing questions to everyone, especially someone who has been on both sides of the fence, seeing other people's campaigns, working on other people's campaigns, and having your name on the ballot yourself. No names unless you want to, but can you tell me a story about a campaign that you have seen where they just seem to do everything right, where you just sat back and say, I couldn't have done a better job than that? And conversely, do you have a story about a campaign that you've seen that just couldn't get out of their own way and just couldn't do things more wrong?
I would say the most impressive campaign I've ever seen up close, and I saw it very up close, with Glenn Youngkin's gubernatorial race. I mean, he really had the mindset that he wanted to run as a team. And so he would have rallies. He would invite, me there, Winston there. He would, they would give us political briefings, updates, what they were doing. So we were really heavily involved with them. We would go out on the road with them, and it was presidential level stuff. I mean, I would see the sound stage, the audio visual, everything they would do was tier one. And it doesn't surprise you if you get to know Glenn. He is very competitive, but he's going to do everything he can to do it with excellence. And that was really, really impressive. I'd say that's the most impressive. As far as get out of their own way, this is what I'd say. There is a visible campaign now, and I'm not going to say the name, but I was talking to somebody who is working in and around this campaign, where they will not allow this candidate, and it's in a different state, so this is not a Virginia race anywhere, but it's in another state, where they will not allow this candidate to ever talk to the press or do any speech unless they can get a guarantee there's no Q&A from the audience, and he could go in, he could give the speech that they prepare for them, and he'll read, and then he'll leave. And the sad thing is, this person's bio, this person should be able to walk in and win this seat, but they have them so tightly scripted. And as a result, my interaction with the media and the reporters have been, if you ignore them like that, at some point, they will absolutely assume the worst. And they have a job to do. Recognize they have a job to do. That I'm just shaking my head at some of these campaigns that think that you could simply, completely, and totally blow off the media and Q&A, because it tells me people
see that. Don't you think voters?
I do. I think that voters can sense and feel that you're not accessible. And the single worst trait that anybody in elective office or a candidate for elective office can ever have is be perceived that they're not listening. And that's a really, really dangerous place. I will say, I've often thought, boy, one day I would like to meet whoever was the communications director for former Governor Stafford when he got back from his infamous trip to Argentina,
right,
and did an impromptu press conference. I always thought that person must have wanted to jump out of a window. That's a different way of talking to the press. That's what I always thought. That's the single worst train wreck I've ever seen in my life.
Well, that's only because somebody decided not to moonwalk.
Oh, well, yeah.
That might have been bad.
I forgot. How have I forgotten about that? That was not great moments in Virginia gubernatorial history, right there.
No, that's
not a great moment.
And consultants popping antidepressant pills, I guess.
Right, not good. Good.
Attorney General Jason Miyares, thank you for sharing your electoral and campaign history with us, and some of your thoughts about how to do campaigns the right way. And a really big thank you for appearing.
Always a fun, and we'll need to grab a beer next time I'm home. Okay, have a great.
Let me know. I'm here. Time. Thank you.
All right.
And
thanks,
to the listeners, we hope you find your way to Right Way Politics. And thanks for listening.